Okay, usually the term bargain and an Apple product don't go hand in hand. But when Apple dropped the M5 MacBook Pro, I can't help but think about how this is seriously undercutting the competition. For $1599, you're getting a 10-core CPU and a 10-core GPU with a neural accelerator for faster AI workloads. It also comes standard with 16 gigabytes of unified memory and half a terabyte of storage. Really wished if it was 1 terabyte, that would have been sweet. But that's not too bad for a laptop that's built exceptionally well. I mean, sure, it's still using the recycled chassis from previous generations, but why mess with a formula that already works? Look, you've already seen what Intel has to offer with Panther Lake. It's a big comeback from Intel. The performance, the titanic battery life improvements, and the gaming performance with that new XE3 graphics engine is so good. But all of that comes at a cost. There's no denying that laptops in 2026 are getting more expensive. When you take something like the Dell XPS 14, the base model, for example, with Intel's lower-end Ultra 5 325 sporting 8 cores and a pretty mediocre iGPU, it costs about the same as the MacBook, and you're guaranteed to leave a lot of performance on the table. If you want something that can actually run toe-to-toe with the M5, you'll need to pony up another $600 for a config with the Ultra X7 35H. But look, at the end of the day, I don't want this to become a Mac versus PC video. That debate will never end. There are certain things that Windows does better than Mac, and vice versa. Though I'm not sure that's even true anymore with Copilot's questionable impact on the PC reputation. But that's a topic to be explored for another time. But anyways, if you're in the Apple ecosystem, maybe you bought the M1 MacBook Air or the M2 Air back in the day, and you're looking to upgrade. The real question is, how much of a performance improvement does M5 actually bring to the table? Well, first, let's go over what's actually new from an architectural standpoint. And well, on paper, it might not seem like a whole lot has changed from M4 to M5. It's still on the 3nm architecture, offering the same number of CPU and GPU cores, the same maximum memory capacity. However, the memory bandwidth has been boosted by roughly 30%. So to find out how fast the M5 really is, I'll be running our standard set of tests on everything from the M1 all the way to the M4. And for fun, I'll be throwing in my own M4 Pro MacBook Pro, you know, the laptop that I religiously use every day for my production needs. So if you're coming from an M1 or M2 MacBook Air, the improvements here are pretty substantial. Starting with multi-core performance, the M5 is, wait for it, 134% faster than M1. That's more than double the performance, guys. Even against the M4 Air, you're looking at a solid 47% boost, and that's all thanks to the M5 being able to sustain higher power levels at 25 watts versus the MacBook Air's M4's 12 watts. So it's pretty clear that Apple has hit Moore's Law. When we look at single-core performance, the M5 sees a solid jump over M1. Not as dramatic as multi-core, but it's still a noticeable improvement for everyday tasks and single-threaded workflows. Interestingly, it's a bit faster than my M4 MacBook Pro. Then again, in real-world use cases, you're really not going to notice the differences, whether that's opening multiple spreadsheets, PDFs, you know, stuff that takes less CPU resources. Now, where things get really interesting is in AI workloads. So I ran LM Studio with the DeepSeek R1 8 billion parameter model, and the M5 is 97% faster than M1, essentially doubling performance. But the jump from M4 isn't as fast as Apple claims. Here are some results with the 14B model. Now, for GPU accelerated tasks like Blender, man, M5 is on a whole new level. We're talking about a task that takes over 45 minutes on the M1 being cut down to just 4 minutes on the M5. That's a 90% reduction in render time. So essentially what Apple has done here is pump in twice the amount of power on the M5 to yield double the performance compared to M4. Adobe Photoshop performance is pretty awesome on the M5. Basically, it's double the speed compared to M1, and compared to M4, it's a generous improvement. Lightroom Classic, on the other hand, runs really well on all of these Macs. I mean, sure, compared to the M1, it's nearly 60% faster, but compared to M4 and M3, it's respectable. It just goes to show how incredibly well optimized these apps are for Apple Silicon. In creator-focused tasks like DaVinci Resolve Studio, you're looking at export times that are over 50% faster, and it's not that far off from my M4 Pro MacBook Pro. Adobe Premiere Pro shows similar gains as well. So if you're thinking about getting into content creation and, if you're sleeping on getting a Mac, now is the time. All right, I want to quickly talk about gaming on these Macs. And while they aren't dedicated gaming machines, there are some titles that you can actually enjoy on these ecosystems. So I ran Cyberpunk 2077. I'm so glad it's finally supported. It actually gives us a really nice, performance metric to see what the performance gains are from M1 all the way to M5. And as you can see, it's pretty much double the output, especially compared to M4. You're getting almost twice the FPS on M5, which is great. But again, makes sense because Apple is literally pumping twice the power on the M5 MacBook Pro. So can you actually game on the M5 MacBook Pro? Yes. The library is certainly narrower compared to a dedicated Windows gaming laptop. But yeah, if you have some downtime, you can certainly get away with some gaming. Now let's talk about something that doesn't always get enough attention. Thermals. And this is actually a huge reason why the M5 MacBook Pro can sustain its performance advantage over the M4 MacBook Air. You see, the MacBook Pro has an active cooling system with a fan, which means that it can pull in cool air, actively cool the chip and the internals, and exhaust the hot air out the back. It's a simple but effective design that allows the M5 to maintain those 25 watts of power levels consistently. The M4 Air, on the other hand, is passively cooled, which means there's no fan, and you might ask why. Well, that's how Apple was able to keep it just under 0.44 inches thin. It's an incredibly sleek design, but there is a trade-off. So under sustained heavy workloads, things like video exports, 3D rendering, or compiling code, the Air hits thermal throttling. So the power levels drop around 12 watts in order to manage the heat. So that's why you're seeing those performance gaps widen for longer tasks. So for shorter bursts, the M4 Air is fantastic. But if you're doing sustained heavy core workloads, the MacBook Pro's active cooling gives it a significant advantage. Now, Apple hasn't officially announced the M5 MacBook Air yet, but it'll be interesting to see what they'll do to make it more efficient, and especially on the cooling front. There are already some M4 Air users experimenting with thermal mods to boost performance, which tells you that there's certainly headroom if you can manage the heat better. But yeah, it's just something to keep in mind if your workflow involves sustained performance over long periods of time. Now, if we switch gears to battery life, this is where the larger chassis starts to pay off. The M5 MacBook Pro packs a 72.4 watt-hour battery compared to the M4 Air's 53.8 watt-hour cell, and under lighter workloads like web browsing, the M5 lasted 2 hours longer than the M4 Air, but to my surprise, it surpassed my M4 Pro MacBook Pro. But that does kind of add up since the M4 Pro is powering a larger 16-inch display. Now, on our YouTube playback test, the M5 hits a whopping 26 hours of runtime compared to the M4 Air's 15.5 hours, and the M1 got just under 12 hours, which I think is still pretty darn impressive for a Mac that's almost 6 years old, guys. Things do take a bit of a turn when you switch to heavier CPU workloads. The MacBook Airs take this round since they're only sipping between 9 to 12 watts compared to 24 watts. Now, if we look at the external package, Apple didn't really reinvent the wheel here, but there are some great features worth highlighting. For example, I'm going to start with the display. It is a 14.2-inch 3K liquid Retina XDR with ProMotion up to 120 Hz, which is a noticeable improvement compared to the M4 MacBook Air, and it gets incredibly bright. We're talking sustained brightness that hits over 600 nits. With HDR peaks, that goes all the way higher, but you can see how it fares against the M4, the M3, the M2, and the M1 MacBook Airs. But the real star here is that nano texture option. If you haven't experienced this feature, it is a game changer for anyone working near, window or under overhead lighting. It diffuses the reflections without that hazy, soft look you get from traditional matte screens. Plus, the colors, they stay punchy, contrast remains excellent, and you're not constantly fighting glare. It's honestly one of those upgrades or one of those things that, once you get used to, it's just really hard to go back. And I think it's the best $150 upgrade option to spend, in my opinion. Now, sure, there's a whole debate between Apple's standard, glass display and the nano texture option, which is a subjective preference, but what I would recommend is just walking into your local Apple store, getting to experience them side by side, and then just seeing what fits your style. The rest of the hardware is classic MacBook Pro. You've got this all aluminum unibody chassis that feels rock solid, paired with a really good keyboard and a massive force trackpad, and it's still the best in the business. You also get 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports, an HDMI 2.1 port, and a fast full-size SD card slot. You also get MagSafe 3 charging and a headphone jack to round out the I/O. The built-in speakers is phenomenal. Bottom line is everything just works, except for macOS Tahoe. You see, I need to talk about this whole operating system because it has been undoubtedly one of the buggiest macOS releases in recent memory. First off, the whole liquid glass implementation across the UI, it just looks awful. I mean, Apple made it sound really cool at the keynote, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really help the end user at all. Now, this could be subjective, but beyond the aesthetic issues, there were some legitimate bugs that I ran into. For example, the app launcher looks more crammed and it freezes frequently when I use my all-finger gesture to launch it. The Command-Shift-5 to launch the screen capture tool straight up refuses to work when I have multiple displays connected to the Mac. So the quick fix is for me to unplug the displays, plug the Mac in, and then get my screenshot tool working. And if that isn't fair, there's a whole community on Reddit and even on the Apple forums talking about a whole set of other issues like, increased memory consumption, AirDrop issues, and even some more random stuff. But luckily, some of those issues have been addressed with the recent macOS 26.2 update. So if you're picking up or thinking about picking up the M5 MacBook Pro, you'll likely have a smoother experience. On another note, I've got a whole other rant about iOS 26 on my iPhone Air, which is coming out separately. You definitely do not want to miss that out. It's been an awful experience, but yeah, that's another topic for another day, but stay tuned for that. Again, you don't want to miss that. So the M5 MacBook Pro at $1,599 is genuinely one of the best value propositions Apple has offered in years. I think it seriously undercuts a lot of the competition, especially in the Windows space, albeit I did wish if they offered a 1 terabyte storage option as the base tier, but I can just continue to complain about some other nitpicks. But if you're sitting on an M1 or an M2 MacBook Air, this is a no-brainer upgrade. We're talking 2 to 3x performance improvements across the board, and the battery life improvements are awesome. You see, Apple, they didn't reinvent the MacBook Pro with the M5. But at the same time, they didn't need to. They just took what's already an excellent formula, they upgraded the internals significantly, and they priced it competitively. And in 2026, when most laptop prices are climbing, that's a win. And this also makes me super excited about what's about to come this year, hopefully, when Apple launches the M5 Pro and the M5 Max. Just honestly can't wait to get my hands on those when they eventually get announced, hopefully soon. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. I'm Ibor with Hardware Canucks, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. And don't forget to spend responsibly.